This is ABC.
You're watching KAPP Channel 35, Yakima. The News 35, 11 o'clock report.
Fire investigators say paint thinner helped feed a fatal fire on Highway 410 this morning. Good evening and thanks for joining us. An early morning fire destroyed a Yakima Valley business and claimed the life of a Selah man. 29-year-old Greg Richardson was working on a remodeling project in the Twin Rivers Inn when it burst into flames. As News 35's Jim Hazen reports, fire investigators say a flammable liquid played a part in that fire.
By the time crews arrived at the scene, the heat and flames were too intense for firefighters to enter the structure. Strong winds fanned the flames, and within minutes the fire leveled half of the Twin Rivers Inn. Firefighters were forced to stand back and watch it burn.
There was nothing but pour water on it. It was all a ball of fire when we got here, and so we just watched the structures nearby and tried to cool it down.
The Twin Rivers Inn was closed for remodeling. Investigators say Greg Richardson and 3 others were removing some old carpet using a highly flammable lacquer thinner. The fumes from the lacquer thinner were ignited from a spark on a vacuum cleaner. The restaurant quickly filled up with a heavy black smoke. 2 of the workers escaped through a window. A third got out through an upstairs apartment. Fire Chief Ted Cowan says Richardson tried but couldn't find his way out. 2 passing motorists saw the smoke, stopped, and tried to save Richardson.
We kicked the back door in. We got in, we could hear him screaming. We got into the inside wall, and we couldn't get no further than that. Flames came through the wall, and there's too much smoke to get through. There's nothing we could do. It's too late.
13 firefighters from the Naches Fire District, along with additional crews from Lower Naches, fought the fire. Once the fire was out, firefighters found Richardson's body about 8 feet from the back door. Near Naches, Jim Hazen, News 35.
The restaurant, of course, a total loss, but no damage estimate has been made on the restaurant. A Costa Rican jet exploded in flames this evening while trying to take off from the San Jose, Costa Rica airport in Colombia on a flight from Nicaragua and Miami. A traffic control supervisor says the Boeing 727 was unable to get off the ground and burst into flames as it ran off the runway onto a grassy area. Red Cross officials say about 10 people were injured, 3 seriously. More than 20 people were reported aboard by the co-pilot. Co-pilot says, however, there were no deaths. The hijacker of a Colombian jetliner apparently jumped off the plane after it landed back in Colombia this evening. The plane's captain told a Colombian radio chain that the hijacker jumped out the back door as the jetliner taxied on the dark toward the terminal at the airport in the coastal city of Cartagena. Police have searched slums and a swampy area around the airport but have been unable to find the hijacker. The ordeal started when the hijacker commandeered the Boeing 727 after it took off from Medellin in northwest Colombia. The plane returned to Medellin and the passengers were allowed off the plane. The crew then flew the plane to Panama, Aruba, and back to Colombia. The push is on to get Panamanian military leader Manuel Noriega to relinquish power before the Moscow summit. President Reagan's emissary is back in Panama negotiating to get Noriega to leave that country. But President Reagan says nothing has been settled. Leaders on Capitol Hill, meantime, debated the issue.
And the indictment today simply serves as a tool of keeping him in Panama, which I think is not desirable.
And I think dismissing the indictments would be a grave mistake, any way you look at it.
Besides the Noriega deal, the administration would like the Senate to ratify the medium-range missile treaty before Reagan meets with Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev next week. The Senate is in the process of considering the pact and today rejected 3 new challenges to that agreement. About 1,000 mourners attended a memorial service this morning for a boy who was killed in Friday's shooting rampage at a school in Winnetka, Illinois. 5 other children were wounded when a woman opened fire in an elementary school. ABC's Chris Bury reports on the woman, Lori Dan, and why her bizarre attack was not a complete surprise to those who knew her.
A small boy's funeral in a driving rain was yet another tragic image left behind by the mad journey of Lori Dan.
Why did this have to happen? Why couldn't it have been stopped? I mean, here was a person reaching out for help. She didn't get it. And it was a matter of time before this time bomb exploded.
Lori Dan exploded Friday, her reaching out apparently hidden in a rage of violence. Not only did she shoot 6 children, Lori Dan also sent packets of poisoned food to people she had known.
It's almost impossible to predict violence in normal people or in even people with past histories of emotional illness.
But Dan's history had grown stranger and stranger. It included the suspected stabbing of her ex-husband, telephone death threats to his family and to a former boyfriend. At her Wisconsin apartment, neighbors said she rode the elevators for hours.
Sometimes she would have a notepad and take notes of where people got on and off the elevator.
Everyone recognized her as the most unusual person in the whole place.
Many people knew about Lori Dan's troubles, including her family, police, and the FBI. Yet apparently, no one took them seriously enough. Not neighbors who thought her strange but harmless.
She wasn't the type that would frighten me.
Not the families who fired her from babysitting jobs for suspected theft and vandalism.
I think that she had the ability to show well, and with time that facade wore thin.
Not even the prosecutor seeking proof that Dan made threatening phone calls.
To force them to seek psychiatric or psychological counseling, you need to have evidence against them.
So the troubled fragments of Lori Dan's personality exploded before anyone would or could stop her, and innocent people paid the price. Chris Bury, ABC News, Winnetka, Illinois.
And still to come on News 35, while health administrators work on education and prevention plans to curb the spread of AIDS, for some families the education process comes firsthand. We'll have that story next. And the governor's staff came to Yakima today for input on changing the state's tax system.
From the beginning, Champs de Bourillon Amphitheater and Winery has brought quality entertainment to North Central Washington. And their lineup for the 1988 Summer Music Theater season is no exception. This season opener is Sunday, May 29th, featuring Toto, fresh from a whirlwind European tour and the recent release of their best-selling album, The Seventh One. Season concert packages and general admission ticket packages are now available. So plan ahead and avoid the last-minute rush by calling the Champs de Bourillon Winery hotline for the latest ticket information.
It's a cup of coffee and the paper at dawn. It's a game of catch out on the lawn. It's turkey dinners, brothers and sisters. It's our heart and soul. It's that place in all of us called home.
No one has made more home loans than Washington Mutual. And no one makes it easier to have a place to hang your heart.
That place in all of us called home.
The Spec Group offers you an auto mall of cars and trucks in Sunnyside that no one in our valley can match. And for those of you that would like to just come in and take a look at 6 new auto lines on one lot, it's kind of like an auto park. Come and see the new Chevrolets, Buicks, Chryslers, Plymouths, Dodges, and Nissans all at one location, the downtown Sunnyside location. And for our Spec Group Used Car Center, well, we're just a couple of blocks away at 1020 Yakima Valley Highway. The Spec Group, they've been doing it right for 76 years.
The president of Pacific Power and Light says utility customers have the most to gain by a proposed merger of PP&L and Utah Power and Light. David Bolender, the president of PP&L, says that if the merger is approved, prices for PP&L customers would remain stable for 5 years.
Promising no rate increases for a 5-year period, or no price increases for a 5-year period. The reason we think we can do that is that there are some large savings that occur from the merger that we think will help us overcome inflation, price increases from our suppliers, as well as the cost of wages and things like that that keep going up. So.
Bolender says the merger would make PP&L one of the 2 biggest utilities in the nation. Merger has been approved by utility regulators in Idaho, Wyoming, and California, but has yet to get a green light from Washington, Oregon, Montana, and Utah. PP&L is expecting an administrative law judge to issue a proposed order on the merger by the middle of next month. The state's financial future may include overhauling the current tax and spending system. As News 35's Dan Holler reports, today in Yakima, a governor-appointed committee met to discuss viewpoints on tax reform and spending controls.
It's named the Governor's Committee on Washington's Financial Future. The 19-member panel was appointed by Governor Booth Gardner in April, and according to Department of Revenue Director Bill Wilkerson, it has 4 objectives, all of them designed to discuss how state and local governments should tax and control spending.
If you took the personal income step particularly, then it's going to have to be coupled with
some very real controls so that that just doesn't become a new added tax on top of everything else that we already have.
The meetings are among 18 focus group sessions and 5 regional public meetings to be held throughout the state this month and in June and July. Most here agree the current tax and spending systems need to be changed.
In our county, we encourage our employees to make themselves a good example in the eyes of the taxpayer, and I think that it should start from there in state. Government officials, the same kind of thing. State employees. We need to really work on that. I think people need to realize and be comfortable with the folks that serve them and feel that they're doing a good job.
The alternatives for tax and spending reform are expected to be submitted to the legislature by Governor Gardner. If Keith Daniels has his way, one of the changes will include revamping the state's business and occupation tax, a tax he claims is unfair.
You know, tax has been one of the big bugaboos I've felt, and I think my feeling is probably pretty much universal, except perhaps in some of the larger corporations. The B&O tax is a very regressive tax as far as bringing in people into the state, and also as far as being able to support the small business enterprise.
Wilkerson says the meetings are the first phase of a process designed to maximize public participation and build a consensus of support for tax and spending reform. The committee will submit one or more alternatives to Governor Gardner by November 30th. The governor plans to present reform options to the legislature, which would then decide whether to put any reform measure on the ballot. In Yakima, Dan Haller, News 35.
A public hearing on taxing and